So with the undersides sprayed, I've masked them off. A little word on the masking that you can see here. As you can see, the only things I've masked are the underside of the tail planes and the underside of the fuselage. They're the main areas that are at risk of getting overspray, so I've masked them. Now the reason I haven't masked the actual wings themselves is because when I airbrush, I rely on the angles I airbrush at to give sharp edges along the wing leading edges and things like that. So if you can imagine holding the airbrush like so, okay, and then going across like that, so you're shooting down at that sort of angle, and the same here. If you're shooting directly down, what you get is you'll get a sharp division line all along the leading edge of the wing, which will be, most of the time it's going to be a lot more even than you could manage if you tried to use masking tape for it. So that's the reason why I, generally speaking, don't mask the underside of wings. They're not too much danger from overspray, and you get a better division line if you just spray. For these I will actually spray down that way, which will carry the dark earth paint around the leading edge, wrap it around slightly, but still give you a sharp demarcation. If you've never tried it, try it. Like I say, it's much quicker than trying to mask this off, and to my mind gives better results. Anyway, so we've masked that off, we're ready to spray the top sides, and for that we'll be using Mr. Colour 369, which is their dark earth from the RAF set. I had this out a while ago and I checked, and it was it's quite dehydrated, so I've added some Mr. Colour replenishing agent to it to rejuvenate it, which makes it as new. So I've got quite a thin mixture here, so I've added quite a lot of thinners and stuff direct to the cup. Very rarely do you brush paint with Mr. Colour, or very rarely do I brush paint with it, so keeping it thinned and in the paint pot is fine. It doesn't go off like, for instance, enamels. If you put thinned enamel back into the pot, it will go off very rapidly. Mr. Colour doesn't do that. In fact, I've rejuvenated it from completely dried out to good as new in several hours with a replenishing agent. So I'll just tip some of this into the cup, like so. See how we've you see that's coming through straight away. Okay, it's quite thin, so I'm going to okay, so we'll put that out the way over there. Put the lid on just to stop any spills, and we're ready to spray. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover some of the more difficult areas, like the underside of the tail here. And turn the pressure up a little bit. Okay, that's better. So I'm applying quite a, initially it's a misted coat, like so, and then almost immediately I open the airbrush up and give it quite a heavy wet coat. So it's just working a section at a time on the model. Okay, and I'm just going to adjust this camera a second because yeah, that's better because that's giving you a better angle if I use the second camera angle. So, like I said, Now, one of the things I don't like when we've discussed that I don't pre-shade is that pre-shading relies on applying the coats over it in a kind of translucent manner, which I've always found quite unsatisfactory. I like my initial camouflage coats to be completely opaque. So there's another reason I don't personally tend to use pre-shading. So just work down the fuselage. Okay, so we're working under these division lines, so it's a case of misting along these division lines here. Same with these division lines here. Being careful with your overspray zones. Now, one thing that will happen is that with the best will in the world, when you haven't masked 100% of the model like I haven't, you're almost inevitably going to end up with a little bit of overspray somewhere. Just be prepared to go back and touch it up. Although generally the touching up is still quicker than the extra time you take to mask the whole lot. So you can see the joy of Mr. Colour is how quickly it builds up into a completely opaque finish. So taking care to cover all of the areas. Let's check how much. Yeah, I've still got. Okay, so in terms of the leading edges, like we've discussed, I'm going away from the fuselage. Okay, so we're trying not to get any overspray under these areas. As you can see, somehow I've managed to get some dark earth on the underside of the wing there, but don't worry about that. Again, that's the touch-up we were talking about. I've got no idea, because that's a finger mark. But anyway, I'll be spraying that way into the wing, leading edge. The trailing edge is thinner, so it's not as critical which angle, so I'm happy to spray it more or less 90 degrees to the trailing edge. Okay, so again, slightly away from the fuselage. Quite a shallow angle. And just being careful to avoid the overspray zones. Okay, so we'll do the same. What I'm going to do is use a very shallow angle. I'm just checking the underside of this, and quite fortuitously the area there where I've managed to get some dark earth paint in a finger mark is going to be completely covered by a roundel, so that was a lucky break for me. So anyway, that's one wing done, so we're just going to do the other wing. I think I've got enough in there to just about cover the other wing. So again, quite a shallow angle. Open your airbrush up, spray like so. I'm just noticing an area on that I hadn't done. Okay, just going to cut to air just for a second there. just to evaporate some of the thinner, and then we'll go back. Okay, so at that point, in a very few seconds, as you can see, the model has been, the upper surfaces have been completely coated with dark earth. So what I'm going to do is I'm immediately going to switch to go for that post shading effect we discussed. He says, realising he hadn't got one of his paler colours out, so we're looking for a reasonably pale colour, and let's have a look. So there's a couple of pale colours I've just quickly dragged out. So we've got H318 there, which is Radome Tan, and H51 there, which is Flesh. So Flesh is a bit darker, so I'm going to go with the Radome Tan colour. Okay, add a bit of that, bit of the Radome Tan, thin it back. Okay, so we're going straight into the post shading. Now you might notice on this tail plane that's really quite a pale colour. Not worried about that, because what's going to happen is I'm going to tone that right back in a minute with the base dark earth. So I'm hoping you can see how pale that's going on there. Okay. So like I said, it looks very pale, but we're not worried because we're going to tone that back. Okay, now switching 90 degrees. Like I said yesterday, make sure you go right up to the edge of these panels. So that you avoid that, well, for want of a better expression, pre-shaded look. See, looks terrible, doesn't it? Looks awful. No panic. Step one. Okay, that's the dark earth applied and post shaded. I'm sure you'll agree that's looking pretty awful. Panic ye not, it's all part of the plan. So I'm just going to give the airbrush a quick Very quick swab out. And then we'll add a drop of dark earth into here. Getting that right back. And let's get that sprayed nice and open. Okay, and then we're just going to go over the whole model with our base. I'm spraying that reasonably wet over there. Now the good thing about this is as soon as I've applied one heavily thinned coat of the base colour, it immediately highlights areas where I might need to tone it back a bit more. It kind of makes some areas where I've gone a bit heavy stand out even more, if that makes sense. So open your airbrush up. You can see hopefully the difference between the two wings, where that is immediately starting to fade right back. Again, like I say, what I prefer about this method over pre-shading is that all the weathering work is being done over a very opaque coat of the base colour, which I just find very, very preferable. And I can gently work on this, toning my shading back with the base colour without having to worry about the opacity, because I know that the underlying my sort of earth shading is a completely opaque coat of dark earth. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sort of there. Okay, I'm hoping that you can see the effect that those mist coats have had on toning it all back and fading it all back. So what I've got now is a basic dark earth colour with a sort of variegated cloudy pattern of paler brown showing up in there. It's more random than even most of the most random pre-shading you'll see. And I just overall I prefer the effect. The other thing is that these mister colours, they dry to this beautiful sort of, as you can see, that semi-gloss sort of sheen. Which just makes it easier when you do come to be glossing your model up later. So anyway, there's the initial dark earth coat applied. So the next coat is going to be, actually because of this is a Malta scheme, it's going to be actually a dark grey, where it would more normally be light stone or mid stone. So next time I see you, we'll have masked off and we'll be ready to apply the dark grey camouflage. So stay tuned and I'll see you then.